Morning, everybody. So today's talk's a little different than what I did last year, if you were here. This year I'm going straight into the nerd stuff. So I'm not going to spend much time on the basics. I'm here for the whole day. I'm happy to take questions. So if you have questions about things like title tags and stuff like that, please come ask me. That's not where this talk is going. This talk is going to talk about some of the stuff I see happening on Amazon and Google, and briefly how I think you should capitalize on it. And John, by the way, John, right, that's because someone just said John to me. Jeff, by the way, just like covered a third of what I was going to talk about, so thanks a lot. My name is Ian. I run a company in Seattle. I've been doing one form or another of digital marketing since 1995. I know I look too young for that, but I will tell you that my ego is about the size of a piece of damp lint. So please ask me questions anytime you want. I'm being a little melodramatic there, but I'm happy to take questions. All right. It's great. We get paid by Stellar Labs, which is awesome. We love working with them. I can answer questions for free. Don't be afraid that I'm going to ask you to pull out a credit card. So today, if you have questions, let me know. You can tweet me, whatever you want to do. From last year, my family has this code word with me where if they ask me what time it is and I start telling them how the watch works in excruciating, agonizing detail, they say, interesting. All right, today could really be an interesting talk. So someone up front can just sort of mouth if it gets there. A lot of what I'm going to talk about is a little bit gray hat. So we try to look cute and innocent as we scrape the crap out of Amazon and Google to figure out exactly what's going on and what's not. I get the little thing on Amazon a lot saying, you look like you're a computer, please put in your information here. There are days at my office when no one can run a search on Google without having that thing show up because some clown in the office is crawling Google improperly. So a lot of this stuff comes from that kind of research. We do think about front-end listing optimization, stuff like that. Most of the thinking you're going to hear about today, though, comes from the back end of all this, from reading patents, from scraping and looking for results, doing correlations. So some of it may not look like the obvious, do this to the bullets, do this to the copy. Just kind of keep that in mind. And I'm going to talk about each of the algorithms. I'm going to start with Amazon. I'm actually going to spend quite a bit of time on Amazon because there were a few small changes in the Amazon algorithm this year. They actually did this the day after my son was born. So we were sitting in the hospital getting ready to go home, and there was this big thud, and everything in the hospital started vibrating. So yeah, kind of first day of family life, I guess. I don't know. Anybody here in January to March of this year see some kind of major shakeup in the way their products were ranking on Amazon? Okay, because there was this sort of disturbance in the force right about, I'm a Star Trek guy, by the way, not Star Wars, but it's just such a good analogy. There was this sort of disturbance that happened, and on all the black hat forums and every place else, all of a sudden you saw lots of people talking about how their rankings had changed, most of them complaining that all the really kind of creepy, weird stuff they were doing, like buying reviews, wasn't working anymore. And then all the other people on the forums went on there and said, yeah, what were you thinking? But there was a pretty big shakeup. And it wasn't just about stopping spammers. Part of what they did as well is if you looked at the results, and this is part of what we do, is we track rankings over time. If you looked at rankings for remote-controlled moose call, I don't go hunting, but this is like the most random possible thing I can think of. Don't go start sourcing remote control moose calls. From what I see on Amazon, they don't sell very well. But if you looked a year ago, you would have seen things that always have remote call. They would have had cow, calf, moose somewhere in the copy. If you looked at the keywords on the back end, if you could, you'd probably see the same kinds of things. And you'd always see some form of almost exact match in the product title, like remote moose call. Now, you've got things ranking that don't have those phrases anywhere. In the description, in the product description, in the title, in the bullets. It might be in the keywords, I don't know, I can't tell. But the majority of the products ranking on that first page do not have that key phrase anywhere in any of the non-keyword text. This is another example from my own nerdy little hobbies where it used to be that if you did a search on miniature terrain, most of the stuff on the front page would have the words miniature and terrain. And now, instead, it can be miniature buildings and, you know, Gothic building, large set, and stuff like that. That's a pretty big change, right? This is something that was not happening before. Amazon has changed the way they think about language in a pretty fundamental way. And when I see that, I do what any normal person would do, and I go start reading patents. So I went and took a look at the patents, which can induce insanity, and lucky for you all, you have people like me who, when I'm not taking my meds properly, decide to stay up until 3 in the morning reading patents. I actually have a JD. I went to law school. I never practiced. I went into marketing as soon as I got out. The only profession even less respected than law, as it turns out. And there's some interesting things in the patents. I'm not going to read these to you. You don't have to read them. I just want to show that I actually read them. I was actually looking at them. And some of the stuff that came up was they're doing a lot of work on trying to interpret language. Instead of just looking for matching keywords, they're looking to do something a little bit different from their past algorithm, where they would do a keyword match, they'd look at sales performance, and then they'd look at behavior like reviews, right? We all know that standard set of factors, right? Keywords field, product description, bullets, as it turns out, don't have a direct impact on the rankings that we can see. But these were the two big basics. So they've added something pretty major now. And that's this concept of expansion and disambiguation, all right? Which is a really fancy way of saying finding synonyms and trying to figure out what the hell someone's saying when they type in a particular phrase. And to do that, you can't just jump in and say, okay, they said car, so they must mean auto, or they said auto, they must mean car. They have to get a lot more elaborate, and they have to do something similar to what's called word vector analysis. See, I told you, this is going to get really nerdy. Word vector analysis, again, is a really fancy way of just saying, if you could put words on a graph in a space and measure the distance between them, that's how they do it. But instead of looking for the words that are being used on the page, they're looking at this huge picture of the entire English language, or whatever language, and they're saying, here are the words that are nearby, we should look for those too. And the classic example is, you know, if you're searching for prince, a prince, you know that king is related to it, queen is related to king in another direction, and then princess is a vector going the same direction from queen. I know, we're getting to interesting. But it's actually pretty important to understand just the basics of what's going on here. All right, what's going on here is they are going to look and say, Mantis Pro talks about things like remote control. It talks about call capacity. It talks about moose, but it also talks about elk. And elk are related to moose. Therefore, we're going to show this if we don't have enough other products. Okay? That's word vector. And I'm going to talk about the implications of what you need to do in a minute. But if you look at a ranking, you'll have the exact match, and it'll show up somewhere in that ranking, usually up pretty high. But then they're going to start looking at how easily classified it is. And this is just to prove, again, that I'm a nerd. All right, we can sort of imitate this, and we do, to test this stuff out. And what we found is, if you looked at all the different rankings, all the different listings for remote control moose call, you would see that the most common word between them is sound. And sound, of course, relates to call, which relates to noise, which relates to other kinds of sound, which relates to everything from duck calls to elk calls to everything else. Some of the descriptions don't have remote control moose call in them, but they talk about all the different sounds they make. And you'd be amazed. It's like the sound of a moose playing in water, the sound of a moose that wants to mate, the sound of a moose urinating. That's actually a sound that these calls can make. I'm just saying. If it's easy to classify, then they'll immediately say, oh, okay, let's just take all these other terms and match them up. On the other hand, they can go entirely a different direction, and they can actually look at the vectors, all right? And the vectors are other words that are related. So moose cow, moose bull, moose calves. All right, those are related to moose call. Elk, wild turkeys, didn't see any of those show up. Caribou, I don't think you want to have a grizzly call, so they don't really talk about that too much. But they take all of this, and they're putting it into this enormous, weird kind of stew of words. And they use that stew of words to figure out, okay, these two things should be here. Another example I like to use is big building pictures, because there's a lot of ambiguity here, right? Do they mean pictures of big buildings? Do they mean big pictures of buildings? Do they mean big pictures of buildings being built? Don't know. Really big Lego? Could be. So here, they've got a result, and the perfect match is big pictures of buildings. And these are giant pictures you hang on your wall, right? They're, pretty large. But then as they do expansion, they start to get to big pictures you would hang inside your building. And this is the second ranking. And then, further down the page, they have little teeny magnets that you hang on your fridge that are pictures of big buildings, like the Empire State Building. And then at the very bottom, they have really big Lego boards for building your stuff, right? So what they're trying to do here is they're matching this up. They expanded to this. They tried to disambiguate, meaning they tried to find related terms that still make sense, like this. And then they looked at behavior. And some people searching on building meant the verb, not the noun. So they put in the Lego boards. That's how they're building their rankings now. And what that means is sticking stuff into your keywords field may not do it anymore. All right, putting in the obvious phrases is not necessarily going to do it, but it also means you don't necessarily have to compete based on those exact phrases. So Jeff was talking about not, just doing what everyone else is doing. This is your opportunity to not do what everyone else is doing. Need a tool. You need a tool. Wow, it's a good thing you asked that. So I'll get to that in 1 second. Again, few matches, hard to define, but if you start taking a look at things like people who viewed this also viewed, you'll start to see why they are matching up non-building things with big pictures. So if you look at who looked at what, they're trying to use this data to disambiguate, and they've always done this. But it's a little bit more accurate now. So if you take a look, if you go to any one of those products and you look at who also viewed, you're going to see all the different types of products, and you're going to see the kind of phrases you could use to try to get into those rankings. So as an example, canvas wall art. Wall art, as it turns out, is a pretty good keyword if you want to show up for big building pictures, which also means, by the way, big building pictures might not be a terrible way to get in for wall art. So that's not a tool exactly, but that's one inroads into this. And in fact, if you take a look at the vectors, if you use the nerdy word vector analysis, and there are, by the way, tools out there that will do this directly. The problem with the direct tools is they're really expensive. We are actually working on one. I'm not saying that to pitch it because it's going to be out there for free so we can show off how nerdy we are, but it's going to be a while. And it's because the amount of computing power needed to do this it's a lot. My laptop levitates off the desk when I'm trying to make it work. This also means that reviews are not as powerful as they used to be. And at least crappy reviews are not. And when I say this, this is different than spam reviews. I'm not talking about faked reviews. I'm talking about people who go in and say, great mug, love this, nice pencil. All right, they may be a verified purchaser. It may be completely legit. It may be someone doing lots of reviews like that to try to bring up their review count. I don't know. But they're getting a lot more sophisticated. They're looking at quality of reviews now. And the reason I'm talking about this is because, again, this may not get you into trouble. So here's an example of a whole bunch of reviews where with all of these reviews, they all have similar words in them, like sturdy. Now that either means they are faked or they're just lousy reviews. Someone looked at the other reviews, typed them in. Someone looked at the copy on the page, typed that in, whatever. Here, if you look at it, the first one says, I love this mug. The second one says, love this mug. So how are they scoring this? How are they figuring out which reviews work and which don't? Well, they're looking at the way that they're using the same natural language processing rules as they're using for matching up descriptions. So if they take a whole bunch of reviews and they run them through this same kind of keyword expansion, the same kind of analysis, and they find that they're all similar, they're probably going to give you a little less credit for all those reviews. There's not a lot you can do about that. But I'm just telling you, if you see that rankings where you thought you were doing well because of review count are suddenly dropping, you're probably not getting in trouble. It's probably just that those reviews are getting a little bit less weight than they were. And again, it's because they're applying those same rules, those same new changes that they're making. So what do you do about all this? What are the changes? Here's a few very specific tactics. The first one is, excuse me, I'm getting over the flu. I'm not contagious, but my voice isn't working all that well. The first tactic is you got to improve sales performance. Duh, right? You know, everybody knows that. But a trick that I still don't see a lot of people using, that I just want to put out there again, is do phrase targeting. So I have this book that I've sold 10 copies. I'm not even going to tell you the title. Just you decide if you want to track it down or not. And I'm trying to rank for the word consulting, or even better, business consulting or consulting business. I can't do that because I can't get enough people typing in that phrase. And if I can't get people to type in consulting business and buy my book, I will never rank for consulting business, because that's the single biggest part of the Amazon algorithm, right, is search versus sales performance. Everybody here pretty much knows that, I think? Yeah. So that's a vicious cycle, right? It's very hard to get out of that. What you can do is you can go to folks and say, to buy my book, go search for, and then title of the book plus your keyword. So you can go a little bit, you can vary a little bit from the exact phrase. And if you can get folks to go do that search and buy it, like if you're running ads or something like that, that's going to help you. That also means you can do some stuff with sponsored ads, which I'll talk about in a minute. Make sure you answer questions in the bullets. This is marketing copywriting 101. And I think the next speaker is going to talk about this, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it. But if you want a tool, here's a tool. There's a site called Answer the Public. I'm going to touch on this several times in the next half an hour or so. Answer the Public is a site where you go type in a keyword, and then it generates all the questions that are related to that particular keyword. So for example, I typed in airbrush, and it came up with all these things like what airbrush to use, what airbrush is good for miniatures, what airbrush is good for models, which airbrush is good for Duracoat. Your bullets should answer these questions. And if you run out of bullets, then your product copy should answer these questions. You got to make sure you do this. Answer the Public. By the way, there's a link at the end of this presentation that points to a page that has all the links and the slide deck on it. It used to be I could just use Bitly and put all those things together. They took that away because they're horrible, mean people. So now it's on our site. I'm only saying that so you know I'm not doing it just to bring people to our site. Although that would be great. So you can make sure that you talk about this. Put it into your keywords. Put it into your product description. But most important, put it into your bullets. All right? Make sure that the first thing you do is you answer these questions on the page. Okay? That will improve performance. And it'll improve performance relating to specific phrases. Learn basic emotional copywriting. Again, I'm not going to spend too much time on this because I know we're going to hear about it later on. But this is very clinical copy, right? This is just saying, here's what it features. Generous is, I guess, an emotional copywriting word, but not really. You want to get a little bit more emotional. I know you can't make big promises, right? You can't say this is the best airbrush ever, you're going to love this thing. But what you can do is get a little bit more interesting and point directly to why I would care about it. 0.35 millimeter needle with large 1/3 ounce gravity feed cup. I don't know why I would care about that. I do care that with airbrushes, they clog all the time, and it is a pain in the ass. I spend more time unclogging and cleaning my airbrush than I do actually airbrushing things. So if I can find an airbrush that's good at preventing clogs, I'm probably going to go buy that right away. And by the way, this also becomes a key phrase, right? When you're putting in your keywords, put less clogging, or clogs less, or clog free, or something like that.
Last year you said that like the keywording from the title and the keywords is what affected search.
Well,
are you kind of saying that the bullets now are more important? Or
the bullets themselves are not more important. The title and things like that, they are not as important because of the way they're modeling language now, right? So the exact match isn't necessary. The reason I'm pointing this out is because there's an emotional response. So this is a whole different side of it. But when you start figuring out the emotional response, you can start pulling keywords from those ideas. So one of the other tools you have here is your brain. Right, right.
put that like less clogging in the bullets and in the keywords?
Yeah, because the bullets don't impact rankings. We have scraped now, I think, something. Is there anyone from Amazon here? Okay. We've scraped something like 50,000 listings across a whole bunch of different keyword searches. We don't see any correlation between bullets and rankings. We see correlation between title, product description. I can't tell you keywords because we don't have a good way of finding that. And a few other things like word vectors, so relationships between phrases. So this is basic copywriting, but when you look at this and you start to realize these are the questions we need to answer, those become your key phrases as well. If you write for this, based on what answer the public told you, if you optimize for it, you have a better shot at ranking for airbrush. And it's not just because, by the way, it will get you more sales. It's because Amazon's algorithm is now looking for this. So what they say in the patent is they are actually looking within a space. So if they have lots and lots of listings and there's just crappy optimization, or they have ones that aren't performing, that's an opportunity for you because you can just do an end run around everybody else by paying attention to these related words. And again, I can't just tell you go use the related word tool. I can tell you that you should use Answer the Public. And then there's a bunch of other tools I link to in my, on my blog post. I'm not totally comfortable talking about them here because it'll start sounding like I'm promoting the tools. And I have relationships with almost every single one of the people that make those tools. So I'm not really comfortable talking about them here, but if you go check those out, they all have some ability to show you related phrases that goes beyond just finding synonyms. The one I will talk about is a tool by a company called Moz. It's the Moz Keyword Explorer. They have a way now to put words together, to match them by lexical similarity, which just means words that sort of mean the same thing even if they aren't similar words. That kind of matching will help you a lot with this because you can group your phrases. Sponsored products, using sponsored products to boost sales, yeah, okay, we all know that one. But you can use sponsored products and target those additional phrases. So if you thought that for big building pictures, maybe wall art is a good phrase, buy sponsored ads for wall art and optimize those ads for wall art. Don't use automatic matching. Create an ad that talks about wall art. Point that at your pictures. That will generate the sales for that related phrase. It will help you rank for it. It'll build relevance around it. And you'll start ranking better for big building pictures as well. Okay, so that kind of word vector matching is really important. And understand again, we're coming at this from the back end, right? The patents and the measurement. Don't go try this and tell me that, don't call me angry and say I did this and a week later it wasn't working. This is a long-term play. I can just tell you this is what we're seeing happening on Amazon. So this is a way, if you're just trapped, if you're stuck, if you can't find a way to improve your rankings, do this. It's also just a good way to diversify. So you want to really give that some careful thought. Next tactic is, go for the perfect keyword match, of course, but we're seeing increasing instances where the keywords field is reduced from 1,000 characters to 250. Anybody here seen that yet? Yeah, some people say it's 400, some say it's 250. We had some clients where they just disappeared for some keywords, and they disappeared because those keywords were past the 250 character limit. We found that completely by accident.
Looks like it's title plus backend, between 400 and 450.
Yes, that's...
Whatever's in the title plus.
Yeah, so someone just, I'm sorry, what's your name? What Kevin just said is, Kevin or Gavin? Kevin. Okay. What Kevin just said is, it looks like it's a total of 400 to 450 between the title and the back-end keywords. We're seeing some evidence of that. The only reason I'm not going to put a stake in the ground is it depends on the particular area, the topics. And again, that fits the other changes, right? They don't want as much information there because they're better and better at broadening, at expanding, and disambiguating. So if you have fewer keywords, you don't have to put in every single keyword anymore because they're going to try and figure it out. That's not necessarily a good thing because I never like it when a search engine says, well, we know what's best for you, merchant. That's generally the beginning of a cluster, but that's pretty much what they're saying, and there's not much we can do about it. Basic rules here that you need to stick by even more closely now is no repetition between title, description, and keywords or within keywords, okay? Do, of course, use the keyword field for less obvious stuff, but try to group keywords in a really logical way. So if you have big building pictures, those are 3 keywords. If for some reason you don't put those into your title or your description, put it into your keyword field as big building pictures. Don't do pictures building big, all right? Or big photos like pictures with buildings or something like that. You have to be much, much more conservative about how you put in phrases.
Where do you stand on phrases with commas versus single words with spaces?
No commas, especially now because we got no room to spare. Oh, sorry. Where do I stand on keywords with commas in the keyword field? Sorry, phrases with commas in the keyword field. Do not use any punctuation unless you're going to hyphenate. All right, so if you have 2 versions of a phrase, like building pictures and then building pictures, yeah, sure. So you have building space pictures and then building pictures, building hyphen pictures. According to what Amazon is showing, those are 2 different phrases. If you're very concerned about matching those, that's where you use it. But don't waste any space on punctuation or anything else. Really, seriously. And they've always said this, but now you need to take it seriously because you're going to have 250 characters. And you might want to think about, even if you're not going to do it yet, start thinking about how you can reduce the size of your keyword field. Write it down somewhere, have it in a spreadsheet so that the day you start vanishing for some of the keywords that are further into your back-end keywords, you can paste in the shorter version and get back into the rankings right away. By the way, we saw it happen within 12 hours with clients who lost their rankings, who lost their positions for those keywords.
Have you seen anything with the subject matter field where you can actually use the subject matter field to actually increase that because it's still indexing and still carrying a lot of weight right now. So you can boost that another 150.
Yeah, so the question was, are we seeing any of this with the subject matter field where you can optimize for it? I don't have enough to say for sure. It looks that way, but the problem is, so far we've seen that work in smaller niche areas, not so much in bigger, more crowded areas. So like for iPhone cases, no. And I know that's an exception. It's kind of funny how many iPhone cases there are on Amazon now. There are ways to go about it, and if you want to talk about, if you're selling iPhone cases, you want to talk about it later, I can give you some interesting ideas, and I won't charge you, just saying. So again, coming back to answer the public, if you want to do more expansion and disambiguation, go to answer the public, use it to find these different vectors, and then edit your descriptions. So where maybe you used to say, the Iwata airbrush is perfect for the hobbyist, is the perfect airbrush for you because it's a great airbrush with the airbrushes of the airbrushing and the airbrushes. Now, take those expanded phrases and put them in and actually write good copy. It's astonishing how well these rank now. And this is not just about performance. This is also about those phrases because we've seen listings improve, rankings improve very rapidly. Now, one thing I talked about last year is how changes to listings can improve your rankings briefly. Okay, so we know when you edit this, you're going to move up in the rankings briefly, but it also helps you move up permanently because you've got these vectors matching. I'm not making very good use of time here, so I'm going to speed up a little bit. Another good tactic here is narrowing the field. So I don't know how many of you already do this. Again, I'm the nerd and the marketing copywriter. I'm not in that middle space where you're actually a capable merchant. I'm not a good merchant. But you can, if you sell V-neck t-shirts and you can't get in there, take your product, split it up, and just sell green V-neck t-shirts. Anyone who's in the Scanner Monkey Facebook group saw me ask about this last week, and I said, this is a really stupid question, but can you do this? And the reason you know you can do this is a horribly optimized area. All right, there are people who say nothing about green V-necks, and there's yellow V-necks showing up in the green V-necks. You've got an opportunity here. This is being opportunistic. All right, if you're having a hard time, take your products, split them up by color, split them up by attribute, sell them optimized for those attributes. Do the same thing with packages.
When you say split them, I'm sorry. When you say split them, I mean, take the same, if I sell, let's say, normally I have like 10 different colors, so I was always trying to bundle them
Yeah.
to get more review, get the reviews.
Yeah.
So you're saying break it?
You may have to at this point. You may have to. And I know that's counterintuitive, all right? And I would say do that in your worst possible crisis where you just cannot seem to sell anything, where you're just swamped in the rankings. Just a good example here, if you've got, 1,000, if you've got 20,000 listings for a particular product, and by separating out into an individual product, to an individual color and product, like I said, flu, you're only reducing the number of listings you're competing with by 10%. That doesn't seem like a win, but you have to look at the level of optimization. So here, you're only going from maybe 40,000 searches against 138,000 results, right? And then when you go more specific, you've got 1,700 searches against 68,000 results. That seems like a terrible trade, right? But it's a good trade because the optimization is so bad. All right, again, this is classic opportunistic SEO. This is something we've done on Google for years and years and years. The way Amazon is going, you're going to be able to do this more and more. And this is, by the way, this is one of the classic signs. If you see products that just make no sense, do a search on Google, by the way, for the color red. You'll laugh really hard. And then look in the images.
So when you have variations, like you put the color field in, like green,
Mm-hmm.
when the product displays, it says, my product, period, green. Does that do this, or you have to split out the variable?
Okay, so the question is, if you just use the variable, it'll say, my shirt.green. Splitting it out can work better because if you can get buying behavior around that particular color, it's definitely going to help you rank faster because then you're actually selling your product, selling your product based on that exact phrase. So remember I said perfect match. I know, it's a little strange. Packaging up, you all know packages are really great for this. Just keep thinking about how you can use packages to do the same thing. If you see a chance to expand phrases, so I ride bicycles a lot, and I'll look for bicycle tires. Well, maybe I should sell a package that's a flat-proof tire with a flat-proof tube, or a super light tire and a super light tube. And if you can come up with something like that and look for the folks who are going after ultralight tire and tube set, or ultralight tires, and then start optimizing around those, you're probably going to see more sales. I know that's kind of Merchant 101, but when I was reading the patents, a light bulb went on. Sometimes I'm a little slow. So what's happening next? Well, voice is not really happening next, it's happening right now. And it's very problematic because the way Alexa is going to start working is they're going to have Amazon's Choice. I love this. Amazon's Choice. Where they're going to pick the highly rated, well-priced products. Something tells me that the Amazon private label stuff will show up first, but I don't know. But this does mean that some of that disambiguation, all right, a lot of that expansion, that's them trying to understand English language and Spanish language and everything else because of voice. When you ask a question, you're not going to say V-neck t-shirts, right? You're going to say, Alexa, I want, buy me a V-neck t-shirt, right? Or buy me a t-shirt. At which point Alexa will buy you a V-neck t-shirt even though you want a regular t-shirt. But they're trying to figure that out so that if you do say, Alexa, buy me a t-shirt, there's a collection of data that tells Amazon, oh, okay, I want a V-neck t-shirt. It's a big part of what they're doing here. And then this is the scariest one for me, is that Amazon is now buying product listing ads on Google. Amazon swore, and I think Jeff Bezos and Sergey Brin must have gotten into a fist fight at some point, or like one of these, because that's what happens when people like me get into fights. And he swore that they would never buy any advertising on Amazon on Google ever again, because they want to give up the data, and they just started doing this. The problem here is if you are a merchant and you sell off of Amazon, what does this do? Makes it harder for you to sell your products off of Amazon. That's not the thinking. That's not the strategy. But just understand, they are competing now. And if they buy PLAs for a particular product on Amazon, they're going to give that product a huge boost. I don't have a good solution to that yet, except for one thing, which is that Amazon sucks at buying advertising on Google. All right? About 2 weeks ago, I was able to show you buy uranium on Amazon. Probably not. And buy plutonium on Amazon. Also, buy a wife on Amazon. That was there. Buy a husband on Amazon. They are not very good at this yet. So you can probably crush them as far as ad performance. And then the other thing that you're going to start seeing is entities. And entities are basically proper nouns and places. So Empire State Building is an entity. And if someone searches for big building pictures, the entity Empire State Building may match up, which means you can build a strategy around entities, around people, places, and things that have become things. They might be capitalized, might be something else. Amazon is an entity, okay? Empire State Building is an entity. Fridge magnet is not. Picture is not. That's why you want to look at this. And by the way, this is why brands may become more and more important instead of less and less. So just, again, keep in mind, entities are going to be really important. You don't want to try and compete where the entity is a brand name. Try to find another way to compete. So that's Amazon. That's what they're changing, all right? It's that middle, expansion and disambiguation. And that's going to spread out and impact everything else, the way they measure behavior, the way they measure sales performance, the way they do their keyword matching, all of that. It's going to broaden the context. It's going to change how they focus. It's going to change how they align listings with user searches, and it's going to start to improve the quality of voice results, which sometimes means you're not going to show up in the voice results, sorry. Google has been busy too. Google is a whole different animal that looks something like this. Bless their pointy little heads. They have made some clear, for once, Google is clearer. The changes on Google are much clearer than the ones on Amazon. That never happens, just so you know. This time they do. Google has armies of engineers that go out. Anyone from Google here? They have armies of engineers that go out and spout nothing but pure bullshit in an attempt to confuse us. There's one engineer who's, I've actually met, and he's a really good guy, but he'll say things and you just think, I have a law degree and I know that's not true. But anyway, 3 big changes, okay? The first one is this thing called rank brain, which, as it turns out, is using natural language processing and word vectors. There is a race going on here. And it's a hard race. You know, Amazon is the Google of products at this point. Google is trying to become the Amazon of products. And they're in a pretty hard race, and they're using this same concept of word vectors. So the old way would have been to say, you know, to mention dog a certain number of times. Now, it's not the same. My dog is actually too big to fit into the microwave, which is why he has not gone in there yet. That's not really true, but there are times. So you can do this. Cats are related to dogs. If you talk about cats in the same place you talk about dogs, you will rank better for dogs. You look at that airbrush listing. Well, that will help you rank better on Google as well. If you go on Google now and you search for big basketball player or basketball player size, it'll talk about height. If you talk about sumo wrestler size, it'll talk about girth. Google just understands that at this point. Believe it or not, they did not understand that before. They're using this to connect ideas. So I did a search for Firefly Ship. It's a TV show that tragically was canceled. And I did a search for Firefly Ship, and it started ranking things like Serenity And the interesting part of that is it's bolding Serenity, which means that Google thinks Serenity is an important phrase for the search on Firefly ship, which means that if I optimize for Serenity, I might rank for Firefly ship. So first tactic, just change the way you research keywords completely. And here I will talk about some specific tools. Because Keyword Tool IO, I don't know anybody there, so I figure it's a little bit safer. Use tools like these, and yes, use tools that are focused on Amazon as well, especially if you're selling a product and you're marketing on Google. Try to, again, expand and group. Do not use Google tools at all. They are now officially completely, utterly worthless. All right? We have been testing Google's AdWord Keyword Planner. We tested the way that they track keywords. Anybody here using Google Search Console on your sites? So you know how it gives you the query listing? You can get better data by guessing. And I'm not kidding. We were better at correlating to search terms by guessing than we were by looking at the data in Search Console. Do not use Google tools under any circumstances. All right? You can also take a look at a tool called SEMrush. It's more of a competitive research tool. Again, these are all in the links on the site. And what you do then is you group, okay? So I've got 2 phrases that relate to use and 2 phrases that relate to durability and whether I can trust this product, relate to trust. Start grouping them and then start creating content around those groups. So, and I'm not just, when I say content, everybody thinks blog post. It's not a blog post, all right? It's any place you say anything or show anything. So this could be in your product description, in which case I would have a chunk of text about what you use it for, or bullets about what you use it for, and a different set of bullets or text about maintenance and the warranty. Sure, if you want to, write a blog post about which kinds of airbrushes are best for miniatures, or picking out a good airbrush for miniatures. Whatever you want to do there, just understand you want to optimize around these particular terms. Then there's the change in the way the rankings work. Now, Google works with unstructured data, where Amazon works with structured data. Google works with insane data. They're trying to structure it. They have failed pretty badly a couple times. This was once a ranking for how do I stop hiccups. I don't know exactly. I'm not trying number 4. That's all I'm saying. But they've gotten better, okay? So if you do a search now for something like, should I replace all 4 tires? It will immediately show in the rankings, in position 0, before it shows actual rankings, it will show an answer. And this is Google's move towards being a publisher. They don't want you to leave, at least not until you're very sure you've got what you want. So what they do is they're going to show this answer in this box at the top of the page. And they're doing that because if you go on Google Home and you say, okay, Google, do I need to replace all 4 tires on my car? Guess what they're going to read? They're going to say, Les Schwab says, to minimize variances, always match tires. There is no better marketing than that. But of course, there's only one position when it's voice search. So, major tactic, answer questions, which means Google Suggest. This is the only research tool that works on Amazon, on Google still. You start typing in a phrase, and you can tell that millennials did not do these searches. And by the way, if you look at baby boomers, you know that they're not the ones doing the searches either. I suspect it's the Generation X people that are doing it. The best generation, as a Gen Xer, I can say probably not. Figured the generation before me was flying to the moon, and now I spend all my time trying to rank higher on Google. I don't know. But again, you can write pages that answer those specific questions. You want that position 0? Go on Answer the Public, go to Google Suggest, answer those questions in your content. When you write your content, make sure that you actually put the question into your content. What is workflow automation ends up ranking in position 0 for workflow automation. And what happened here is I got competitive. I don't usually go in and tinker with my client's stuff, but here, one of their competitors was in this box, and I said, I wonder if I could get them there. So instead of having it say workflow automation or workflow automation defined, I changed it to what is workflow automation, and poof, It was there within about 24 hours. It's not always that easy, but that can work. What else is changing? Okay, by November, your site must be on HTTPS. It must be on SSL. Everybody know what that means? So when you go to a site, instead of HTTP, it has to be at an HTTPS address. This is not an option, okay? Because right now in Google Chrome, if you have a site that's not on HTTPS, you might get a message like this, not secure. Starting in November or so, this is what people are going to see, and they're not going to see the website first. They're going to see this show up in Chrome. So the question was, the site won't load at all. It'll load if you click advanced and say, take me there anyway. And you know, this won't necessarily be all HTTP pages starting November 2017. First, it'll be pages with bad certificates, pages that aren't properly implemented, whatever else. You got to make that change, though.
You're talking about the SSL certificate? Isn't it
Yeah.
not a given? I mean,
It's not, so SSL certificates are not a given. If you look on a lot of sites, they don't have them, or at least not in their shopping carts. And pure content sites often don't have them, non-transactional sites. You can go use this tool. Again, it's in the list of links. Just go type it in, see if it's verified. If not, go talk to your web host. It might say it's broken, and there's a lot of reasons for it to break. You got to get it fixed, because those will be the first sites that get slammed. Google's switching to a mobile-first index. That means that starting, well, it's transitioning already. Over the next year or so, Google's going to start favoring sites that are mobile-ready, and they're actually going to show rankings as if you're searching on a mobile device first, which means site speed. All right, and I obsess about site speed. I never shut up about it. People get sick of it, but guess what? I was right. Ha! Every now and then I get to gloat, and I take total advantage of it. Google has now finally officially said, as of about a month ago, yes, the speed of your site is a direct ranking factor. Faster sites will outrank slower sites, all other things being equal. Which means you need to learn how to compress images first and foremost. If you're selling products, you got a lot of images, learn how to compress them. So instead of using, say, PNGs, like Treasure Island, I was in Vegas, I hate Vegas. So I did what anyone else would do in Vegas, and I loaded up the Treasure Island website to see if I could make it faster or not. Sort of like reading patents. But they had this image at the bottom, and that's a JPEG. So it's 30 kilobytes. Change it to a PNG, it's 13 kilobytes. You don't have to understand all this, just keep it in mind. So the question here is, does Shopify automatically do some of this stuff? It does some of it badly, some of it well, and they're kind of, you know, you got to check, just always check. Trust but verify. Naked mole rat, cool animal, don't want one. If this is a PNG, it's a real animal. It's proof that gefilte fish can walk. But 700 kilobytes is a PNG, and this is something a lot of shopping software does, is they'll use PNG format, which is really meant for line art, because PNG format is easier to make transparent. Converted to a JPEG, it's less than 10% the size. I went on a site and looked at a product image, changed it to a JPEG, right? 100 kilobytes smaller. So these are the rules you want to use around images. I don't usually do this, but I mistimed. Can we do questions later on? Okay. Then compress your images. All right, some easy tools. Just go in there. All I did was take this image, off the home page of Treasure Island. Just clicked a couple buttons and cut it in half. No difference in appearance I could see. It's a background image, by the way, so we could probably do a lot more with it. Again, I took that JPEG image that I did, just compressed it a little. So now I've gone from, 140 kilobytes to 25. It makes a difference, particularly on mobile. So you start with 60% compression on JPEG, no more than 256 colors on PNG. And then the last thing is mobile friendliness. Your site has to work on mobile. Google has a test. It's wonderful. And it says, yay, you're good. And then you get the report and say, no, why did I get such a low ranking? It's because Google, of course, picks the factors they want. Our site loads in under a second. They say our site loads slowly. I don't know. I wouldn't panic about it, though. Make your site responsive, so it needs to look good at all different sizes. Shopify is not great at this. But it is easy to do with style sheets, so just keep that in mind again. And again, just think about these changes, all right? The biggest one right now is secure. Make sure you're on HTTPS. It's what we have the most control over. Rank brain is a lot like the keyword matching changes I talked about on Amazon. Mobile first is pretty straightforward. Just make your site fast, make it work on mobile. If you use Google's tool and you just follow all the instructions, it will improve your rankings on Google. Whether or not, from an engineering standpoint, it's correct or not, that will help you. All right? And the search engine ranking pages, that's what a SERP is, have changed and will continue to change so that there is a position 0. So these are two search engines with nothing in common, right? But they're both chasing the same goal, which is getting smarter, and we need both of them whether we like it or not. So the next step is to pop an Alka-Seltzer or 2 or 6 and start thinking about how exactly you can take advantage of these changes as they happen. Thanks.
All right.